Welcome to the Radiant Visalia podcast. Join us at one of our two services, 9 a.m. and 10:45 a.m. Download the Church Center app or visit our website, radiantvisalia.com, to stay connected with us. All right, enjoy.
There is a heavenly city that I'm compelled to find.
Or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, "Let me take the speck out of your eye," when all the time there is a plank in your own eye? You hypocrites. First take the plank out of your own eye, then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. If you do, they may trample them under their feet and then turn and tear you to pieces.
You gotta love the laughing Jesus of the Gospel of Matthew. My favorite part is when he goes, "You hypocrites." It's great. It's great. There's more where that came from. If you guys watch that movie, the whole thing is just the scripture straight. And it's been a while since I've seen the whole thing, but from what I remember, when he gets to the Matthew 23 part where he's like railing on the Pharisees, he's like sort of giggling too. So thought that part was a little bit much, but otherwise, I love the laughing, joyful Jesus of the Gospel of Matthew. And I just thought for this passage especially, because the more I read it, the more I realized that Jesus is being funny in this passage. There's Craig Keener, the Bible scholar, he said about this passage that we just heard, he said this graphic, hyperbolic image would likely draw laughter and provoke thought. So this is the, Deborah already said, I'm Glenn. Most of you guys know me. I work here at the church. I teach at the Gap Year School, which, by the way, we are accepting applicants for this next year. So if you are 18 to 30 years old and want to just take a year off between high school and college, or you're in your 20s and just want a year of just getting into the Word and getting to know God more, then sign up. Okay, another little commercial break there. So back to judgment, back to criticism. So Matthew 7, this is a super well-known passage, right? We've heard the command to judge not. One preacher called it the John 3:16 of our day. It's like we don't know John 3:16 as much anymore, like that's sort of losing popularity in our society, but we still know that other people aren't supposed to judge us, right? It's not so much that we're not, it's just that other people can't judge us. That's what we know. That's what we remember. Last year, Relevant Magazine published an article about the 5 most misused and abused Bible verses, and this was number 4. They wrote, "We're living in a day that values tolerance above all, unless, of course, someone disagrees with our beliefs, lifestyles, or opinions. Then we're extremely intolerant. We may even boldly shout, 'Only God can judge me.' However, this is Tupac theology, not biblical theology." I know none of you guys listen to Tupac, so that was like, nobody understood that. So this is part of the paradox of the society. I'm just sort of introducing the subject because there's a lot of confusion around this. This is the cultural atmosphere that we are coming into, is that we are an intensely judgmental culture. At our core, we are constantly In the worst sense of that word, we are judging, criticizing, always. And at the same time, the great value of our culture is judge not. That's the paradox of the time that we are living in. I mean, no wonder we're confused, right? I mean, there's certain areas of morality where we're not allowed to speak into. We're not allowed to speak truth to certain areas. They're no-go zones. But there are other areas where if there's the tiniest offense, then we're criticized, then it's publicized, then we're ostracized. It's just this like dramatic like judgment and don't judge kind of thing. So another illustration of this, in the early 2000s, the immortal classic 8 Mile, starring Eminem, another movie I'm sure most of you guys didn't see. It's probably my favorite movie at the time that it came out. I was like 20. So at the very end of the movie, there's this climactic rap battle, and they're going against each other and rapping, and the whole rap battle is like them just tearing each other apart, like criticizing each other, dissing each other, just hating on one another. And then in the very last, part where Eminem, where he wins the rap battle, one of his lines is, "Don't ever try to judge me, dude. You don't know what I've been through." Like, as they were just judging each other the whole entire time, like the whole rap battle was a big judge fest. And he says, "Don't ever try to judge me." I had to edit that line, obviously. This is Eminem we're talking about. That may have been a judgment that I just put on him. So the reality, though, is that I like that because it's like, that's so us, right? That's so us, like full of judgment, full of criticism, and at the same time, like, don't ever try to judge me. Like, you don't even know. And it's just this constant, this is what we're living in. Okay. This is confusing, though. This is confusing because what we've started to take judgment to mean is that you're never allowed to make a moral evaluation. We don't ever define it as such, but really that's what we're saying. We're saying no one's allowed to make any moral evaluations ever, not on me, not on anyone. But then we're constantly doing that. And so we have to really get to what Jesus is getting at, we actually have to I'm going to take the whole first half of this sermon to like bring some clarity and some definitions and talk about when it is okay to judge. Like why we it's not just permitted to judge in the Bible, we're actually commanded to judge. So there's a handout that I put out there with 5 ways to make a righteous judgment, and then 5 ways that we make unrighteous judgments. So you guys can pick that up on your way out if you haven't already. Okay, so here's some examples of this seeming contradiction that's in the scripture. In the next verse, well, actually, it's at the end of the passage that we watched in the movie. I think the movie treated it as like a separate section. That's why there's a little scene break. But Jesus gives that cryptic statement about not giving to dogs what's sacred, and not giving our pearls to pigs. What's interesting is that there's several different ways to interpret this passage, and I don't want to get too sidetracked with that. But the important thing is that if you follow what Jesus is saying, you have to make a judgment. In fact, he sounds actually intensely judgmental after he just for five verses said not to judge. You have to judge when somebody is a dog or they are a pig, because you have to determine if you can trust them with sacred things. And so Jesus, it's perfect because he's giving the counterbalance. Right after telling us to judge not in the bad way, he says, but you know what? Actually, you do have to judge sometimes. You have to evaluate certain situations, and you even have to evaluate certain people. Which, as offensive as that sounds, that is biblical. You have to evaluate people's character to a certain extent to know if you can trust them with sacred things or with pearls. And again, there's several ways to define. Some people say that's preaching the gospel when people aren't listening. Other people say it's secrets, the inner parts of your life that you can't trust them with. Either way, you have to make a judgment. Later on in the same chapter, in Matthew 7, Jesus says, and I think we have a slide for this one too. Matthew 7:15, he says, "Watch out for false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ferocious wolves. By their fruit you will recognize them." We have to judge when a prophet is true or false. Next one, and this one I think is the most helpful actually, John 7:24, Jesus says, "Do not judge according to appearance, but judge with righteous judgment." And this is kind of the perfect transition into the next thing I'm going to talk about, because in one verse, Jesus says, hey, stop making all of your bad judgments. They're wrong. They don't have enough information. The Pharisees were judging him in that moment, and he was saying they're wrong. And then he says, but you know what you need to do? You need to make good judgments. You need to make righteous judgments. Okay, so then you ask, okay, Glenn, well, what's a righteous judgment? That's what I'm going to answer for the next 15 minutes. I'm glad you asked that. Okay, so these are 5 ways that we have to judge. Again, I'm not talking this is permitted, this is commanded by the scripture. We must make these kind of judgments. The first one is we have to judge teachings and beliefs. Okay, we're constantly listening to podcasts, sermons, teachings, ideologies of this age. We're constantly imbibing it. We're constantly getting it on the inside of us, and we're commanded to judge those ideas and teachings to discern if they are true or if they are false. So I already gave the Matthew 7 example where Jesus says, watch out for false prophets. So one more example I'll give is Revelation 2, where Jesus is talking to the churches, and he says, nevertheless, I have this against you. You tolerate that woman Jezebel, who calls herself a prophet. By her teaching, she misleads my servants into sexual immorality and the eating of food sacrificed to idols. So this is Jesus getting pretty judgy, right? Like he's speaking into the church of Thyatira, and he's saying, you know what? You guys are failing to judge the teachings of a false prophet in your midst. And he calls her Jezebel because she was like Jezebel of the Bible. He says, you guys are failing to discern truth from error, and it's actually ruining your church. And sometimes we do this with a judge not mentality. We throw away our brains and we throw away our discernment in the process. And Jesus is saying, don't do that. You've got to evaluate teachings and beliefs for the sake of you and for the sake of the people that you influence. Okay, second way that we make righteous judgments, and this is the trickiest, but it's very important. We judge the actions of other people. We judge the actions. This is the very thing that is that we are most afraid people will do in a wrong way about us, but at the same time, we must do it in a right way. And here's a few examples. First, I don't have a slide for this, but in the book of Galatians, this is another one that I'd love to just talk about for a while because it's just hilarious, but I'm just throwing it out there. In the book of Galatians, Paul actually calls out the apostle Peter for his hypocritical actions, not for what he was teaching or preaching, but what he was actually doing. Because Peter was saying the right thing, and then he was living wrongly secretly. And I'm hoping that Paul had a one-on-one first with him, just that he did this the right way. We don't know that. All we know is that in a book of the Bible that lasts forever, Paul calls out Peter. It's like a Christian Jerry Springer episode. Okay, so let's get some more clarity on what this means to judge another person's action. Okay, 1 Corinthians 5, 12 through 13. Paul says, what business is it of mine to judge those outside the church? Okay, stop. When I'm talking about judging actions, we're not talking about judging people who are outside of the church. We're not talking about evaluating the actions of unbelievers. They're unbelievers. They need the love of God. They need the gospel. We don't need to figure out, are they doing this right? Are they, Cardi B did this again? Like, who cares? She's not in the church. It doesn't matter. We're not called to do that. So Paul makes this boundary like, okay, don't go there. We don't need to go there. But then he says, are you not to judge those inside? God will judge those outside, okay? We leave those outside the church to him, and we pray for salvation, but we are to judge those inside. Okay, you remember the story about Cain and Abel, where Cain kills his brother, and God comes to him in kindness and says, what'd you do? Where's your brother? And Cain goes, what? Am I my brother's keeper? Like, what do I care? Am I supposed to keep tabs on him? And the unanswered response is, yeah, you are. You're a community. And I'm speaking this into an American independent culture where we don't really walk this out, where really our mindset, even in the church, is just, I'm my own person, don't mess with me, I don't mess with you. And the Bible invades that. It says, no, that's actually not the way we do things in the church. We're a community. What you do affects me, and what I do affects you. And so we need to get in each other's business a little bit. So again, some of you guys are like, wait a second, people are getting into my business too much. It's like, I know, we'll get to that. We will get to unrighteous judgments. But right now I'm saying we need to be in each other's business a little bit in a right way. Finally, Matthew 18, another unpopular one, definitely not as popular as the judge not verse. Matthew 18, verse 15, Jesus says, if your brother or sister sins, go and point out their fault, just between the two of you. Okay, that's helpful. Like, this is getting clearer, right? It's like, make a righteous judgment. Judge beliefs and teachings. Okay, check, we got that. You don't need to worry about people outside the church. Okay, got that. You do when your brother or sister, this is somebody in your inner circle. Okay, this is not just random, like, person on the back row you've never talked to before, like, hey, I need to talk to you. It's like, no, you don't. You don't need to do that. This is like somebody in your inner circle, okay, a friend or a family member, like, who you have rapport with, right? They know you love them. You guys have a relationship, all right? Jesus says, yeah, you need to get in their business. Do it one-on-one first. Do it lovingly. No passive-aggressive social media posts, okay? Like, man, don't you hate it when... the post like, don't you hate it when someone, it's like, and that's the person that you just talked to like a couple days ago. And it's just, we read that, we're just like, it's so toxic. Anyway, we'll talk more about that. But okay, just between the two of you, if they listen to you, you have won them over. This is good. The simple fact is that we are called to be truth tellers in the right way, in the right time, in the right heart. It's not loving to withhold information and concerned conversations from people just out of fear. Just out of, yeah, but what if they don't like me as much? Yeah, but what if it's uncomfortable? That's not love. That's not what Jesus has commanded us to do. So in the right way and in the right place and the right time, we do need to have these hard conversations. And I felt like this isn't, we're getting to, the main point of the message. We're not there yet. But I did feel as I was writing this out that for some of you, this would be the main takeaway for today. That actually sometimes the reason we struggle with unrighteous judgment and criticism so much is because we're too afraid to just have a one-on-one conversation with somebody. And so all we're left with is all of our thoughts and just criticism, and it's just churning inside of us, and we're upset and we're concerned. And honestly, it might really be something legitimate that you're concerned about, but because you're too afraid to talk to that person, it just stays and it becomes toxic for your soul on the inside. And I think this will actually free some of you just to go, you know what, there's actually a time to have a good one-on-one, like loving conversation with somebody and say, hey, and come with questions, right? Like, we do this in humility. Use your best relationship skills, don't assume you know the whole picture, but like, hey, I have a question. Like, I saw this and just, what's going on with that? A lot of good can come out of that. A lot of good can come out of it. Okay, number 3, righteous judgment is it's an assessment based on objective fact. Okay? This is not like, well, maybe or probably, like, it's a belief or an action that actually happened. All right, that's all for that one. Next one. These are righteous judgments that are based on God's standards, not on society standards or what makes you feel comfortable. That's not, again, we're talking about in Christian community here. The biggest question is, what does God say about this? It's not, does this make me feel comfortable, or do I like this? What does God say about this action or belief? Okay, last one is that when you make a good evaluation, a righteous judgment, then you do it from a heart of mercy and wisdom, and you do it with the motivation to restore, always to restore. And so if you're feeling like, oh, I need to have a conversation with somebody, like this morning is confirming it, I need to have this conversation, that's why I made the checklist for the back, just go, hey, is this something real that we're talking about, or just an assumption? Is my heart to help this person, or am I just criticizing? So Galatians 6:1, Paul talks about this. He says, brothers and sisters, if someone is caught in a sin, this is within the church, you who live by the Spirit should restore that person gently. Oh my gosh, tone and attitude is so important in these kind of sensitive situations, right? Gently. But watch yourselves, or you also may be tempted. So the point is restoration and helping them. Another point on this one is what Jesus said in our original passage here in Matthew 7. He says, you hypocrite, which just a note on that word, by the way, that it's such a harsh sounding word, but it actually didn't mean back then what it means now. We have made the word hypocrite to be something pretty bad, which it could have been, but in the way Jesus was using it, it actually means actor. So he's actually calling people out for being actors. Like you're acting one way in front of other people and then doing something else. So just a little note on that. So he says, you hypocrite, you play actors, you fakers. First take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Okay, Jesus is so brilliant here, okay? First of all, note what we've been talking about the last 10 minutes, that he does not say, take the plank out of your own eye, and then just mind your own business. Just don't even talk to anyone else. You just like keep to your own little world. He doesn't say that. He says, take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from somebody else's eye. Now let me break down some more just the brilliance of Jesus here. First of all, if you are actually taking planks out of your own eye, metaphorically, like you've got sins and actually, you know what I'm going to use? How many of you guys were here last week for Tiffany's message on anxiety? So good. She modeled this so perfectly, is that she used herself as the example of like her anxiety struggles. And how much easier was it to receive what she was saying because of that? She was saying, I have this plank in my eye called anxiety, and I've been wrestling with it and repenting from it and dealing with it. And in that, it created a humility on the inside of her and a mercy for other people that struggle with the same thing. That's the brilliance of Jesus, is that once we first focus on our own struggles and we see that they're sticking out of our eye like an obvious plank that everyone else can notice and not us, once we start really going to town with God and saying, man, help me, forgive me, oh, I need grace, I need freedom from this, then we start to look at others with more compassion. Oh yeah, they're struggling just like me. Like we've all got stuff in our eye, And more than just that, it gives you strategy on how to help somebody. Oh yeah, I've been dealing with anxiety for years. Like, let me give you some tips. Like God's given me some things and I can really help you. Again, how much easier is it to receive from somebody who's been dealing with their own plank for years and years, and then they come to you and to help. The last part of the brilliance is that I think it's a safe posture to always see our own junk as planks and other people's junk as specks. I think that's just a safe attitude. It's like, well, no, like they struggle way more than me. Like I'll prove it. It's like, no, this is safe. See your own struggle as a plank and theirs as a speck. Like this is just Jesus trying to help you out in your relationships, in loving other people. This is good. So just the last part here. Oh man. The last part here. When I was 19 years old, I was in a band and we thought we were really good. And we were making our way to the big time. And we actually started out really well. We really wanted to honor Jesus with our band, and we would preach the gospel from the stage. Within months of playing shows with this band, we all were off track. Every single one of us was in a compromising, immoral relationship. Found out later that the lead singer was doing hard drugs on the side. We didn't even know. And we're preaching Jesus on the stage. We're in the middle of a band meeting one day. Like, what did we meet about? I don't know. We thought we were super important. Like we're in a band meeting, how to take over the world with our band. And Travis calls me up, who was 22 at the time, 22 or 23. Calls me up. He's my youth pastor. Travis calls me up, and he goes, in more or less words, he says, "Hey, I think you guys need to take a break from your band. Like, I don't think you guys are doing well in your personal lives." And I got so mad. I was like, who does this guy think he is to judge me? Like, oh my gosh, Travis thinks he's all big, just all these things that happen. And so we're talking, and like it's getting more and more heated. I'm getting all riled up, and then Travis starts to talking, and his voice breaks, and he starts to cry. He starts to cry on the phone. Like, I'm trying to argue with him, he starts to cry. Like, it's not working here. And so he's like in a broken voice, like with tears, he goes, "Glenn, I love you. I care about all of you guys. This is not healthy for you to be living this way and then doing ministry on the weekends." And maybe it was just what he said, maybe the tears, I don't know, but it finally got through to me in that moment. It was like a God moment where just is like, bing, duh, like, hello, something needs to change here. And I actually went back inside to the band. It was like 30 minutes later, went back inside to our band meeting, and I said, "We got to break up." And they were so mad. I said, "We got to break up." We never got back together. That was the end. That was the end of our band that day from that conversation. And I have zero regrets, because at that time, that was like my main dream in life, like was to be a rock drummer and like tour the world. Like that was my main dream. And for me, that was like killing a dream. It was like everything to do that. And in retrospect, it's like, that wasn't that cool of a dream. It probably wouldn't have happened the way I was picturing it anyway. And you know what? I got God instead. I got God. Like that changed the course of my life, where I started to really just pursue like an authentic life in God. And these kind of conversations can be life-changing. That's what I'm saying. These hard conversations. Okay. I should have gone faster with that section. Okay. This next service is going to be like speed racer. Okay. Unrighteous judgments, all right? These are the unrighteous judgments, and I will go a little quicker just for time's sake. Number one way we make unrighteous judgments is that we judge people's motives, okay? I have a Philippians 1 passage up there. Paul, basically in Philippians 1, says, "I understand that some preachers have good motives, and I understand that some preachers have bad motives." And then here's my favorite part, verse 18. He goes, "But what does it matter?" He goes, "Who cares?" He's like, "Is it my job to judge where they're coming from? Is it my job to judge their motives? Who cares? It's not my job, and it's not our job. In fact, it's impossible." I was talking to Travis about this yesterday. He's like, "You know what? It's so true. It's like we don't even know our own motives." I was like, that is so true. We don't even know why we do stuff. Like, why do we think we can judge somebody else for why they do something? So that's out of bounds. Motives are out of bounds, okay? My big example of this is Christian radio, all right? I had a friend who traveled with a couple Christian bands. He traveled with Delirious, said they were awesome, traveled with another band that was, a household name, and he said they were like ridiculous, like immature jerks, the whole 9 yards. From that point of hearing my friend say that when I was like 21 years old, I was like, dude, forget this. Like all these Christian bands are a joke. I still listen to them for some reason. I don't know why, but I was like, I'd listen to them, I'd hear them, and I just judged every single one. And the one I judged the most was Jeremy Camp. And I don't even know why. Like, why did I judge Jeremy Camp so much? Like, I'd see his hair and I'd listen to his terrible music. I'm like, dude, this guy is compromised poser, like, who is this guy? I don't even know. Like, that's literally all I was basing it on was the sound of his music and his haircut. And so a few years ago, I listened to a podcast with Jeremy Camp. He's like sharing his testimony of like his wife dying, and he's still trusting God. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm such a jerk. And then he like continues. He's like, yeah, the Christian music industry it's so tough to like stay real. Like I've really had to fight for like an authentic relationship with God and like just the real thing, and I'm like, dude, this guy's awesome. Like he's so legit. Why did I judge him for 12 years? Like it didn't even make any sense. And so we just got to be so careful. Like, we don't even know why we judge people sometimes the way we do, but it's off limits. Okay, the second one, and this is really like related, it's the root cause, is we judge without adequate information. Okay? We judge without adequate information. Assumption judgment is what I'm calling it. It's rampant in our day, right? Okay, if you drive a Subaru, you're a flaming liberal. I know it, okay? Environmental sticker on the back, proved it, okay? Okay, pickup truck, you Trump-loving, shotgun-toting, you got like a little like Marine sticker, like, dude, I don't even need to talk to you. I know everything about you, okay? I know your political views. I know your heart. I know your life. Like, don't even come around, okay? Like, this is how we are, okay? But, okay, more than cars, where do we do this the most? Where do we do it the most? Come on, just say it. Social media, right? Assumption judgment. We see one post, one picture, and then we take the ball like 50 yards down the field in our mind. It's like, oh, because I saw him with her, that means da-da-da-da-da-da, and you make all these assumption judgments. It's so toxic. And that's one reason why social media is usually so toxic, right? Like, that's all we're doing as we scroll is like, judge, I'm jealous of you, judge. It's like, there's not a lot of healthiness going on. There's not a lot of like, I bless you, I intercede for you. Like, that's not happening most of the time. I wish it did. I wish I did. Okay, the next unrighteous judgment is judgment based on gossip, okay? So James 4 is the passage there. He relates slander, gossip with this bad judgment. And I was just meditating on this week, and I thought, yeah, of course it does. Like, of course, judgment and gossip and slander go together. Like, how fair is your evaluation going to be when you guys are talking about somebody who's not there? And I'm not talking about good things, like, that's great, like speaking someone's praises, but obviously we're talking about negative evaluations of somebody who's not even in the room. It's slander. And that's an unrighteous judgment that we're making. Psychologists say that one reason we judge people unfairly and critically is because we're looking to bond with another person. So you've got like 3 people having lunch together, and you just start talking about so-and-so. And it's like, oh yeah, he did this, and he wears this, and oh my gosh, I can't believe it. Really, you're wanting to bond with the other people that you're having lunch with. And it's like, we think that that's a healthy way of bonding, but it's not. It's toxic. That's a toxic way to relate to somebody else. So I'm saying that because there's like a part of it where it's understandable. We want to connect with somebody, But I just want to say that that's a lie. To connect with another person around judging someone else is a lie, and the Holy Spirit is not going to be present in that relationship, in that conversation, and you don't want any part of it. We want less of that kind of toxicity. Okay, number 4, unrighteous judgment is to judge others with a stricter standard than you do yourself. Okay? So this is definitely getting to the passage at hand again, what we're actually talking about in Matthew 7. Say your judgment is fair. It's based on what somebody actually did, actually said, actually believes. Okay? It's fair. It's not hearsay, it's not gossip, all this stuff. Your heart's to restore. Your heart, okay? That judgment you're placing, though, is it something that you will willingly submit to yourself? Because whether or not you want to, if you make that judgment will come back around upon you. So you better decide, if you're going to make a judgment, is this something that I myself stand under? Okay? So here's the example. And this is about Jess, my wife, and I didn't run this by her, so this is real time, guys. This is live, okay? So in our house, okay, so in our house, she does like the lion's share of all the work, like the laundry, the dishes, she does like 95% of it, okay? Every once in a while, I do the dishes. And when I do the dishes in those sparse occasions, we have, you can't tell on our dishwasher if the dishes are clean or not. So we have a magnet that says clean, unclean. And the one thing that Jess doesn't do is she doesn't change the magnet. Okay? Calling her out right here. She doesn't change the magnet, okay? And so how ludicrous would it be if she comes home from work one day and I rail on her for not changing the magnet when she has done 95% of the housework? This may be a word for some husbands right now. This may be a prophetic word. Because all she would have to say is, oh, fantastic. You want to do all the dishes now from now on? You'll always know when they're clean or dirty? I mean, that would be fair, right? That would be her fair response. Well, she doesn't say that, but it's like, that's a prime example of like log in the eye, why don't you change the magnet, when it's like, I'm not doing most of the stuff at the house. And so we do this. We have these unfair evaluations that we don't even stand up under ourselves. Just to say a little bit more about this, there is a reaping and sowing principle where that we will reap the judgments that we make on other people. And I think the most common way this happens is with our parents. Okay, we make judgments on our parents for the way that they parented us, the way they mothered us, the way they fathered us. How many times have you heard, I am not going to turn out like my dad? Okay, with that willful decision, you will absolutely turn out exactly like your dad. And maybe not immediately, but like maybe about the time that you become a dad, maybe about the time you become a parent, I don't know. But that judgment, it's an unfair evaluation, because do you know everything that your parents were going through? No. Do you know all their trials, their tribulations, all their struggles that they went through as they were parenting you? No, you do not have adequate information. See like earlier point of the sermon. We don't have the adequate information. So we make unrighteous judgments on our parents, and those actually come back on us. It's the reaping and sowing principle. It's like the law of gravity. You can't escape it. You can't escape it. It will come back. How do we stop that? Well, we repent of our critical judgments. And I believe I've made them. I believe probably almost every single person in this room has made critical and unfair judgments on their parents, other people. And I'm just saying, unless we could do it today we could repent and we could ask for the mercy of Jesus, and that will circumvent the cycle of judgment, heaping on judgment, because we can look to the cross where Jesus took all of the judgment upon himself and provided mercy for every single person that ever wanted it. And so all we have to do, we don't have to do any payback. That's not the gospel. All we do is we look to Jesus and go, oh man, forgive me for my judgments. Forgive me for my criticisms. I want the mercy that you paid for on the cross. And bam, you're free. You're free from that reaping and sowing principle. Last thing is a judgment from a harsh and critical spirit. And I think we've talked about that. We've explained that. So I just want to end. I want to end with this picture of Jesus. And they'll put the passage on the screen of John 8. You probably know the story, honestly. It's the story of Jesus and the adulterous woman. But as I thought about it, I thought, I just want to end by looking at Jesus. And Jesus in this story is it's the perfect example of truth-telling, like I talked about in the first half of the message, and then just showing mercy, and then just calling out people for unfair, unrighteous judgments. I mean, all of it in this one story is encompassed, okay? So again, you guys have probably heard it. So an adulteress, a woman is caught in the act of adultery. The Pharisees bring her to Jesus' feet, and they say, what should we do? The law says we're supposed to stone her. Jesus, like his perfect discernment antenna is up, and he goes, there's so many unfair judgments happening right now. First of all, if she was caught in the act, where's the guy? How unfair and sexist is that, okay? So that's first thing. Second of all, the people who are critically judging her, the Pharisees, later we know Jesus calls them out for secret sin. That they're like whitewashed tombs with dead men's bones on the inside of greed and lust and all these things. They're filled with secret sins that have never seen the light of day. And they're pushing this shamed woman out into the public. So Jesus comes in and he goes, man, this is all jacked up. There's unrighteous judgments happening everywhere. And so, of course, he did Jesus. And he goes, okay, sweet. You want to play by the judgment rules? First person, no sin, you start stoning her. And he starts to write mysteriously in the sand. We don't know what he wrote. All I can think is that whatever he wrote in the sand, it was somehow exposing the hypocrisy of everyone there. Because one by one, they just all started to leave. Conviction for unrighteous judgment set in, and they all began to drop their stones and leave. The only person left is the woman herself, who had a sin against her, right? Who had a sin against her. And Jesus says, I don't condemn you. Go and sin no more. Go and sin no more. He says, no. I'm not saying sin's okay. I'm not saying that. But he says, I understand. I understand the bigger picture. And I guess just the last thing, last application point is that some of us, I've been talking the whole time, with us as the judger, good and bad, but some of us have been really hurt by judgments, like this woman. Some of us have been really hurt. And I feel like Jesus is looking at you today and he's saying, I know the whole story. I'm not condemning you. I understand. I know your heart in that, and I'm not condemning you. And I just feel like there's some freedom where you've sat under judgments. You've sat under unfair evaluations and criticism. And Jesus is saying, I'm looking at you with eyes of mercy today. I'm not looking at you the way other people have looked at you. And so we're going to do some worship. And I just want to invite you guys. It's probably time to get your kids. But if you are able, I just want to invite you to just do business with the Lord, or even come up here. We'll have people to pray. If you want to repent from judgment, to get free of that judgment cycle, or you just want to feel the mercy of God over your life where you feel like you've been condemned and judged, don't leave today until you've done some of that business. So Jesus, I want to ask that you would just meet with us today. We thank you for who you are, the perfect judge who shows us mercy. We thank you for that, Lord. I'm asking for clarity, for revelation, for just encounters with your mercy today. We just ask that would happen. Just come and reveal yourself to us, Lord.
Thanks for listening. We want to be a resource for you as you walk with Jesus. So please connect with us at radiantvisalia.com. Until next time.
There is a heavenly city that I'm compelled to find. Oh, I love the flowers and trees and the smell of the grinding sea and all the beautiful things here in life. And I